Differentiation versus distinctiveness. Contrary to popular opinion, differentiation usually doesn't matter. I say that as someone who has managed Fortune 500 brands and startup brands, and from the perspective of both B2B and consumer marketing. Customers are typically looking for an obvious default choice. They want a product that represents the product category. They don't want something different, special, or unique. They want a safe choice, something lots of other people bought, or something that looks like what they already had in mind or bought in the past. This is fundamental human psychology. We are social animals who follow the herd, and we prefer things that are familiar. Although customers don't want something fundamentally different, they do value superficial distinctiveness. There are elements that distinguish brands, such as mascots, logos, jingles, design elements, and so on. Byron and the Ehrenberg Bass Institute correctly point this out, but they aren't the only researchers debunking the differentiation myth. Research from the Kellogg School of Management confirms that companies try too hard to differentiate in business-to-business marketing. Customers don't care about these differences for the vast majority of purchases. So differentiation doesn't align with customer needs, and you end up essentially shooting yourself in the foot. You focus on what makes you feel special instead of what drives customers to buy. There are some exceptions where customers do value differentiation. The big ones are what Dr. James Anderson calls strategic purchases. These are purchases that enhance the buyer's fundamental value proposition to their customers. For example, let's say you sell a product that helps couriers speed up their deliveries. You should spend a lot of time proving that your product speeds up deliveries better than competing products can. In other words, prove that you are fundamentally different. But most marketers confuse the exception for the rule. The default position for a product should essentially be the same as the category at large. In other words, you are a branded version of the product category. You don't have to spend that much time with positioning research. The CMO of Yum Brands admits that a lot of market research is pointless because consumer needs are obvious. A lot of marketers seem to think that competition centers around having unique positions in the market. More often than not, that's a recipe for failure. You typically end up giving the market something it doesn't want and it never asked for. You peg yourself into a niche where there's little demand and very little profit. You might think there's low competition, but that's only because you define the market in very narrow terms. It's much better to go where there is high demand, where the fish are biting, even if there's also competition. Positioning is often a distraction from the real work of practicing fundamentals. People would rather look for a quick trick to avoid competition instead of doing the real work of marketing. Occasionally, companies do succeed with true differentiation. A venture-backed firm can become a unicorn, but most venture-backed firms fail and are expected to do so. This path should not be the default for most companies. Often what they're really doing is creating entirely new product categories, which is difficult and very expensive. These startups get particularly rich when their new categories have strong barriers to entry. These are what Dr. Bruce Greenwald calls sustainable competitive advantages. These advantages, most notably economies of scale, are the root source of above average profitability. But Dr. Greenwald points out that most companies do not benefit at all from sustainable competitive advantages. This is actually a wonderful thing because it means markets are essentially level playing fields. New companies can freely enter the market and compete with established larger firms. You can compete without trying so hard to be different. But how can a new company compete with a big established one? Well, in some cases, you just can't. That's when the market is defined heavily by economies of scale, customer captivity, or some enduring barrier to entry. But in most cases, the real problem new businesses have is that they're just not efficient. They're not very productive. Often this is because they're trying too hard to do too many different things. So focus and get better in a narrow area. New businesses do not have a differentiation problem. They have a fundamental efficiency problem. People will buy from you and continue buying from you if you can consistently deliver value. One argument is that small companies need to differentiate, whereas large companies should focus on superficial distinctiveness. Occasionally, you do encounter differentiated new products that succeed, like Sonicare. These products thrive on infomercial-style direct marketing because they truly have a unique attribute that matters. Often this comes from new technology, but most products aren't like that. And for every unique success story, there is a graveyard of unique products that completely failed. The more certain path to success is not to try so hard to be different and focus instead on operational efficiency. Another example is YouTube. I work with many of the top YouTubers who have millions of subscribers. You might think they found some underserved niches and position themselves uniquely. But no, most of the common strategies I see are that they look at what's trending or doing well and they model after that. Those are things with proven demand, real empirical evidence of success. Differentiation comes with a whole lot of uncertainty and a high risk of failure. If you look at the top selling products in most categories, you're going to see a bunch of clones. Customers have preconceived ideas about what they want, and they are not looking for something unfamiliar or different. If they're buying in a category they know nothing about, they'll gravitate to something that seems like a default choice. Occasionally, they'll want a slightly fresh take on an old idea, but your primary job is to give them a branded version of the category. That shifts your focus from competing on the basis of positioning to competing on what Sharp calls mental and physical availability. You can use related terms like distribution, visibility, awareness, etc. Companies that do the best job at enhancing mental availability often do so with marketing that generates waves. They don't rely so much on the direct effect of advertising so much as the free PR and word of mouth that their marketing generates. The ripple effect is one of marketing's metagames. Those that enhance physical availability are often very good at prioritizing partnerships and leveraging the tremendous scale of retailers and marketplaces, software ecosystems, and so on. The fundamental mistake marketers make is defining the target market as the target customer and the value proposition as the USP. These overly narrow definitions lead to undue focus on differentiation. Markets and value propositions are much broader concepts that open the door to more effective strategies than differentiation.